Is New York City's new rule about using the term illegal alien an assault on the Constitution? Yes, but probably not on the Constitution you were thinking about. We'll discuss that next on the Constitution Study.
There's one thing you have to know wherever you make your stand. Came from a long through line of everyday Americans.
Well, hello there, everyday Americans. Paul Engel here with the Constitution Study, where we read and study the Constitution and teach the rising generation to be free. I'm glad you could join me. I hope you'll head over to the website, constitutionstudy.com, find out everything that's going on, read my articles, listen to my podcast, watch the videos, share the information. It's probably the biggest thing we can do is share this information among other citizens, other Americans. Let them know what their rights are, help them recognize when they're being violated, and help prepare them to defend and assert them. You can also sign up for the mailing list, get this information delivered directly to your inbox. You can find out where I'm speaking. And I want to thank everybody that helps make this podcast possible. The people that share it are probably the largest part, but there are people that help, like the band Rebel North and the use of their music, or other Facebook groups that help share and ask questions and make all this happen. So I want to thank all of those as I encourage you to get involved, ask questions on the website, have me come speak to your groups, share this information, and just show people what really happens when you actually begin to know and understand the Constitution of the United States. And with that, let's talk about recent news reports about New York City's new legal enforcement guidelines. No, it's not law. It's a guidance from an executive agency. Right? They're legal enforcement guidelines that ban employers, housing providers, and law enforcement officers from using the term illegal alien. Now, I've heard many people claim that this is a violation of the First Amendment, but they're wrong. See, the First Amendment says Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. See, this rule is not a creation of Congress. It's a creation of New York City's Commission on Human Rights. Now, since Congress has not made this law, this is not a First Amendment violation. See, we've all been told that any abridgment of free speech is a First Amendment violation, but that is just not true. The First Amendment clearly focuses its restrictions on the laws made by Congress. The fact that many laws are created by the executive and judicial branches is a problem I've discussed elsewhere. So while this law is most definitely an abridgment of free speech, the U.S. Constitution only protects us from the federal government abridging our freedom of speech, not from our states or cities. So many of you may be asking right now, if this is a violation of free speech, how can that not be a violation of the Constitution? The answer is that while it is a violation of the Constitution, it's not the Constitution you're thinking of. See, every citizen may speak freely, write, publish his or her sentiments on all subjects, being responsible for abuse of that right, and no law shall be passed to restrain or abridge the liberty of speech or of the press. Notice that doesn't come from the U.S. Constitution. That is the Constitution of the State of New York, Article 1, Section 8. See, we often forget that each and every state has its own constitution, its own compact between the people of that state that forms its government. And all of those constitutions include protections similar to those in the U.S. Constitution's Bill of Rights. So in fact, Article 1 of New York State's Constitution is called the Bill of Rights. And as we see, Section 8 not only protects freedom of speech and of the press in the state, it goes into more detail than the U.S. Constitution does. New York City's new law is clearly a violation of Article 1, Section 8 of the New York State Constitution, since it clearly restrains the liberty of speech. That means it should be challenged in New York State courts as a violation of the Constitution of the State of New York. That said, just because this New York City law isn't a violation of the First Amendment doesn't mean it isn't a violation of the U.S. Constitution. See, the Eighth Amendment says, excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishment inflicted. So let's look at the fine. Now, do you think $250,000 is an excessive fine for using a term not currently favored politically? That's right, $250,000. That's over 3.5 times the average salary of a New York City resident, which is $68,255. Now, I don't know about you, but that certainly seems excessive to me. So this law is a violation of the U.S. Constitution because it's violating the 8th Amendment, just not the First. But that's not all. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protections of the law. That's the 14th Amendment. Since calling someone an illegal alien singles out one group of people for special protection under the law, this rule clearly violates the Equal Protection Clause. Will someone be fined for calling me a natural-born citizen? Well, if not, then why do some groups get protection and others do not? This law, like so many others we see in effect today, is a blatant violation of the Equal Protection Clause. Yet that argument is lost when people falsely claim it's a First Amendment issue. Why do I make such a big deal about what laws are being violated? Because the details matter. See, if we complain when courts misinterpret the Constitution to get the outcomes they want, we can't really suddenly ask them to do so to get the outcomes we want. That's hypocrisy. Better yet, we don't have to. See, if the Constitution means what it says, then we don't need to twist its interpretation to protect liberty because it already does. Yes, this New York City rule violates both the 8th and 14th Amendments of the U.S. Constitution. However, the more egregious violation, that of freedom of speech, is protected by the New York State Constitution. Therefore, this case should be tried as a violation of Article 1, Section 8 of that Constitution. Only if New York State courts fail to uphold their oath to support their state's Constitution should a federal case about violations of the U.S. Constitution be filed. If we want people to follow the laws, including the Constitution, then we have to follow them ourselves. See, otherwise, we're no better than those who use the courts to manipulate the law to get the outcomes they want. We're just doing it for different reasons. So the next time you hear someone claim that this is a violation of the First Amendment, take some time and kindly educate them about the truth. For if you know the truth, it'll set you free. So what do you think? How many of you realized that New York City rule cannot violate the First Amendment because the First Amendment only applies to the federal government? We don't talk about that, partially because of what's called the incorporation doctrine, this idea that the courts came up with that said we can take parts of the Constitution that we want to and apply them to the states. But again, that's a whole nother article. And I've already covered it. The important thing is we don't need to twist the Constitution to get what is right, what is just. It's there. We just need to apply it. That's why John Jay said it was important that we read and study the Constitution so we would recognize when it's being violated, what parts are actually being violated. That we'd be prepared to defend our rights, to assert our rights, and do so properly. Why do I make such a big deal about this being made a federal case? Because it's a state issue. But the problem of moving it to a federal court is twofold. One is, why are we putting so much work on a federal court system? Why are we giving them so much work to do? How about we deal with it at the state level where it actually belongs? But the other problem is, if a federal court gets this wrong, guess what? It's not just the state of New York that suffers. It's the entire country. There's a reason why we have a separation of powers between the state and federal government. And there's a reason why we have different spheres of authority. So it's important that we understand what the actual roles are, what the different constitutions are, where they overlap, where they don't. Most importantly, where our rights are being violated so we can solve them in the right place. See, if New York State screws up, which, having been a citizen there for many decades, I would be surprised if they didn't, then it only affects the poor residents of the state of New York. But if it gets done in federal court, or even worse, the Supreme Court, now all of a sudden, it's not just New York State. It's the entire Northeast, or it's even the entire country. It also brings up the issue of what happens when we bring cases. I'm working on an article now under this wrong concept of certain freedoms. Well, then it becomes easier for a court to dismiss them, not because the case is bad. The situation is dealt with as wrong, but because it wasn't charged under the right violation. You'll see that coming up in an episode soon. But I think it's important for us to remember to be educated and to help educate others. That's why I say share these messages, share these episodes, share the articles that the links point to, because that's where people can find the real information about what is going on. And by sharing that information, we can help educate the nation. We can help educate the next generation. And we can help preserve what liberties and freedoms we have, and hopefully start clawing some of them back. So I hope this educated you. I hope that if you didn't realize what the problem was here, I showed it to you in a way you can understand, that you can apply, that you can discuss with others. Most of all, I hope I got enough of your attention that you'll come back next time on the Constitution Study.